send the link. Okay, so second kickoff of the day, this time for the concepts in sprint 3 that relate to excavation support and lining. As I said earlier on, as for geotechnics, we had to make a selection of concepts out of the 260 that we are introducing with IFC for tunneling. We made a selection of concepts which will look similar in terms of IFC implementation, not in terms of what they mean from a discipline perspective, but what the way they will be implemented. And so this subset of concepts is what we are going to be presenting to you right now in the coming 30 minutes. I shall actually leave the floor to Lars again, who will take you through these. And once you start, Lars, I will be forwarding the link of this call to the rest of the geotech team. Leave you the floor.
Okay. So excavation then, and I've shared my screen. I hope it's visible for all of you. Yeah, good. Okay, so moving from geosciences to excavation support and lining, and repeat a few things. We are still building on, I mean, you always need, that was sort of the purpose of the previous sprints also, there are things that you will always need, so we are sort of incrementally building on what we have done since before. And we are introducing a couple of new concepts, and you see them listed here: spatial containment, element decomposition and composition, materials, assigning properties to materials, earthworks cuttings, excavation cuttings. We have body section solid horizontal geometry, which can be used also in conjunction with guide curves. We can look at that. And we have product span positioning. And for those of you participating in the geo session, this product span positioning is then used also here. It was used in the geo session as well. So
Lars, we lost you again.
Okay, sorry.
Now you're back.
Oh, I wonder what is actually happening here, but
you were at so.
Okay.
You started with excavation usages.
I started with excavation. Okay, so yes, usages. We start with excavation. So for excavation, we have that's something that is slightly changed from IC 4.3. We have actually added an abstract supertype, which is IFC excavation, which is now the then supertype of both underground excavation and earthworks cut. Earthworks cut existed already in IFC 4.3, but the domain team saw a need for separating the underground excavation from the earthworks cut. So then these entities should be contained in IfcTunnel or IfcTunnel part. Does this need to be contained? Question. I don't remember us asking that question, but we are saying that it should be contained. It should have a body geometry. And in this case, we have body geometries that we have used already in Sprint 2.3, but we have also one new option, which is this section solid horizontal and the guide curves. And I know, for example, that Ivar is really interested in this, and I don't know how much time. This is sort of a deep dive going into this, but anyway, the intention is to describe a solid body from sweeping or defining a number of profiles or cross sections along the alignment, and from that creating a solid body, and also assigning guide curves to that body to further describe the shape. There are some caveats, like, for example, when the number of guide curves actually change along the way, then you have to actually split it up in our case, because the section solid horizontal is sort of, when it comes to guide curves, it needs to be the same number along the whole sweep then. Local placement, same as before. So if this is contained in IfcTunnel, for example, it has to be placed locally relatively to the tunnel in that case. It should have a property set, which we have here, excavation common, and also the excavation. We have this excavation cuttings, which is not yet in the documentation, unfortunately. We are regenerating the documentation as we speak, but what it essentially is that these cuttings, this was defined already in IFC 4.3. The cuttings actually describe the resulting void from the excavation, and there is a concept then that you describe what the excavation is actually voiding. So in this case, the excavation cutting should void the geoscience model below, which is a representation then of the actual terrain. So for that, we have maybe not as elaborate as in the description of the geo domain then. We have a geoscience model and a geoscience feature to have some kind of representation of the terrain that shall be voided then by this excavation. And the relationship to use here is IFC-rel voids elements, which is an old concept in IFC. So that's essentially excavation then. So you have the excavation body, the voiding, and the actual terrain needed for that. Then we have another case for waterproofing, and please ask questions if you have any. So waterproofing, we are using an existing IFC entity, IFC covering, predefined type membrane. Again, contained in IfcTunnel or tunnel part, having a body geometry or surface tessellation geometry, local placement, a property set. And then for this membrane, we are actually, and this is a usage that have
Lars, you have
Yes.
some sort of contact problem with the. So this is a usage. You're at the usage from table 157.
Yes. So we have the IFC covering, which is an entity that actually existed in 2x3 already. And we have this usage defined for that entity, material layer set usage, which looks like this. Quite a lot of stuff involved in this. But we wanted to give you a little bit of a challenge. So anyway, essentially what it is that you describe a material layer set, which actually is a set of material layers where each layer defines a material and it defines a layer thickness. So in this case, we have a material layer set for this membrane where you have 2 layers, one with layer thickness 2 millimeters. We don't know if this is okay or not, but anyway, it's a value. And according to this table 157, then the name should be front, and then we have a material which we just say is synthetic. And then we have another layer with another thickness, and the name being fill, again according to this table 157. And the material should be geotextile in this case. So you have actually a membrane then containing or consisting of 2 material layers. And then we have some entities for compartmentalization, difficult word. For water, we are in the waterproofing. So we have one water barrier, which is the actual thing dealing with compartmentalization, which again is contained in the tunnel or tunnel part. It should have a geometry which is not clear to us yet. It should have a local placement, and it should have a property set, which is a property set defined in the tunnel project. And then we describe also the actual compartments, which is a spatial zone aggregated in the tunnel, body geometry, local placement, and a separate property set. So these two sort of go together. And then also to introduce the concept of systems, we have this new predefined type for built system waterproofing, where we should actually include these or group these other objects, the membrane, the water barrier, and the compartment in this waterproofing system to actually convey the function of these objects. And we have also a property set for the system itself. So if no questions, we move on to support. So for support, we have selected to include an element assembly, predefined type arch. This, I think, was added in 4.2 or something. Should be contained in the tunnel or tunnel part, decomposed by arch element, predefined type segment, local placement, and properties we actually don't know yet. And then contained in this element assembly, we have arch elements, of course, and part of the element assembly, body geometry. The element assembly itself doesn't have geometry, of course, because the geometry is described by the components of the assembly. And the local placement here follows the usual rules. It should be placed locally to the then decomposed element, which is the assembly. We have an arch element common, a new property set defined for arch elements, and this should have a single material, then material concrete, and you have the single material single is a concept template that already is in the documentation. And also then for support, we have, for those of you taking part in the geo session, we again use the tunnel typical section, this thing that then uses this product span positioning concept template, where you actually position an object relative or in between 2 reference, which are placed along the alignment. So it sort of describes a longitudinal subsection of the alignment. So then you can sort of imagine that this could sort of go together with the geotech typical section that we had in the previous session. So you can actually then describe, we are still awaiting properties for this, but you can then describe support measures and how they sort of vary and change along the tunnel alignment then. And then we have a build system tunnel support. This is something we added for tunnel, where you include these objects. So you again convey the information that these objects actually provide the function of support then. And you have already done this thing, grouping elements. It's the only difference now is that we are grouping the elements to a specific build system in this case, which is tunnel support. And then last but not least, we have also lining. And in this case, we have, again, we use IFC arch element, predefined type lining, containment, body geometry, local placement, properties, and in this case, single material. And then we also want to, let me see, where do we have that? No, assigning properties to material. That is also something that is coming in the documentation. It has the mechanism has been in the schema for a long time, but we actually had to add a concept template for it. So we are assigning a material to the element, but we also assign a separate property set to the material itself. And of course, the advantage of doing things like this is that you can define a material once with its property set and reuse it for many elements using the same material. And in this case, again, to convey the information that this arch element, we have arch elements both for support and for lining. So to convey the information that this is actually lining and not support, we have a build system again, tunnel lining, which groups this lining element here in a system. So that's about it.
And that's already quite something.
Yes.
We can open up for a question or two. Just again, bear in mind that this is only a subset of all the concepts that are covering excavation, support, waterproofing, lining, and of course, all the concepts are available through the documentation. Any question on your part, Jonathan, Jan Christian? Anyone specifically from the main team to start with?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. I think that the thing you had the question last at the start, should it be contained or not? I think definitely should be contained. That right thing. Then I was not quite sure, but I thought, you know, at the moment it's okay. The other one was, I mean, I'd say that from my point of view, definitely need to be contained. And then the other thing was just on the support. Is it that an IFC element assembly arch, and then it's an arch element? Is this still a predefined type IFC element assembly arch?
Yes.
I mean, okay,
the IFC element assembly arch was actually, let me see.
We covered it in the previous sprint, did we?
element assembly type enum. So let me see, where do we have Arch here? That's the change log. Yeah, I actually can't say. You see, you have the Arch.
Yeah,
This is actually, I can't see when it was actually added here.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually added in the by the IFC Bridge project, but
I thought it was there quite a long time, and then when I looked, I couldn't find it, but I see it's there. I think maybe leave it like that at the moment, but kind of I think something that we need to discuss, because I've been having a lot of thoughts about these IFC element assemblies, that perhaps it would be good to have an IFC element assembly support, but that's sort of been the sort of background to some of our discussions, but I think we'll probably talk about that later. I think probably leave it like that at the moment, but.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if you have talked about this, but maybe a good idea would be, I mean, we have these then weekly support calls, and
exactly.
If we can have people there from our domain teams, I think that would be great, because we need to have these discussions. I think Jan-Erik has raised his hand as well.
Indeed.
Maybe a few words about the timeline here. What is the duration of this sprint and everything that is work in progress? Can you say something about when this is ready? I guess it's a more challenge on our side to finish than on your side, but anyway.
Yeah.
So
you don't say.
So we have extended the duration of the support to you until the end of September. So the weekly support calls, morning and evening at 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. CET time, these are being extended until the end of September. So we are not distinguished these in terms of which discipline to cover. This is very much, up to everyone to bring up any subjects on whatever component, whatever concepts. But yes, and then maybe I think on the two questions that were in your mind, documentation and checker. This is really a matter of a few days, correct? We are almost there, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So I would assume early next week, everything there will be available.
Yeah. So then probably Ivar will be finished before the checker then.
I mean, we as project team are very happy that some have finished before the checker, because that checks the checker. So we have some example data, right?
Exactly.
But so it's also, he has an eagle eye as to what kind of errors he finds everywhere. So I'm very grateful that he participates. But also all of you. So also regarding the work in progress, Jan-Erik, as you've asked, it is quite a batch already. So start with the things that are there, and I hope during the next support calls we will be able to tell you, hey, we've updated the documentation a bit. Please also look just through the changelog of the documentation itself, and you'll see what was changed, and you'll know what kind of stuff was there. I think there's another hand up.
Nadia, yes, please.
Nadia.
Yes, I clicked on the link guide curves, and it just directed me to the same page, the sprint 3 excavation page. So is the documentation for this guide curves not available yet, or?
It's if you see, you have here in the new concepts, you have guide curves here, and this indicates that it actually is approved and shall be merged and included in the documentation that is created now. So it will be in. So yeah, some lag there from us, but
a few hours, and we'll be there.
A few hours lag, yeah. So we were just compiling all of the different changes that were that accrued during the previous sprints, because we had some changes just to documentation, we had some additions, and the regeneration of the documentation takes some time, so we decided to make it once. And this all these approved pull requests on the documentation, we've at least linked that, you know, you can also follow how the standard has been developed. But when the links to the documentation will be available, we'll just switch a rule and
so
have the links to the documentation itself.
If you read MVD XML, then you can look at it here in the pull request, which is linked. But maybe you don't want to do that, or that's completely up to you.
To correct Lars here, it's not MVD XML, it's doc XML even. So
it's doc XML, yes.
But you know, if you're somewhat fluent in XML, it's sort of logical how it's built up.
Yeah.
So with that, and as Jan-Erik has advised us, we should then close this call and open up the third one on the concepts for systems. And I did extend the invitation to both the geotech and the excavation domain team for that matter. So we close this one call and we open up the other one on systems. See you in a minute.
See you in a minute. Thank you all.